James Barnes, Barnes Business. Today we are talking donors. That's one of the things that everybody has on their mind when they run for office. They're like, oh man, I need donors, and where do I get them from, and how do I get there, and like how does this work? And I'm telling you, several of y'all probably are realizing now that you ran that it is not easy to raise money. And so the idea of donors and fundraising and all that stuff, how does this all work? And this is not necessarily a fundraising conversation as it is a donor conversation. So stick with me. Let's talk about donors today, and what does Barnes Business do and how does that work. It's going to be as long as it takes because I know this is a really critical part. And so here's where we're going to start. And I can do this for the entire state, but I'm focusing on Bexar County. So what I did was I have a donor database that I keep, and it's what it's made of is the donors in Bexar County who donated to state PACs and state candidates. So we're not looking at federal stuff, so put that aside. And there's also your local municipality stuff. Put that aside. But so what does that mean though? So we want to know how many. And keep this in mind. You could get donations from outside of Bexar County, but this is a Bexar County donor-centric person. We want to know who's donating in Bexar County to who, what, where, when, and how. And if you want to be part of that and you want to get some of that money, you got to talk to those people. You got to know how to get hold of them, and so forth and so on. So that being said, once again, fundraising is one thing. Donors. So I'm going to drag this on. I'm joking. So I'm going to give you some quick high-level stats real quick, and so. We have here in Bexar County, I've identified, and I'm sure I've missed a few, but I've identified 50, and I have right here, 53,000 donors. That's a lot of donors. And this is two types of donors that I'm looking at. There's individual donors, and then there's entities. And, that being aside, we won't get into that details. We're really looking at, in this conversation, the individual donors, although entities are just as important. But, so what does that mean? We have 53,000 donors. I have another little piece of paper here. That represents over the last, what years is this? 2022 to 2025, so a 4-year cycle. They've given in all these processes, these 53,000 donors, gave $47 million to PACs and candidates in Bexar County. And when I say in Bexar County, they're to PACs and candidates all over Texas, but that money came from donors in Bexar County. So I'm looking at who donated. So you might have donated to outside of county, but I still recognize you as a donor, somebody giving money to a cause. So I'm just kind of keeping that in mind. So I'm going to reverse engineer this a little bit. And so, like I said, $47 million, and that's both entities and individuals, like I said. But let me see here. We have candidate office holders. That represents, I said 47 million. That represents $11 million, $11.25 million, and we're looking at 414 filers. In other words, there's different people running for office over this last cycle. So that's 414 people, filers, and in the individual donations, that's over 11,000 donations just to candidate office holders. And that's really, really cool. And so I've got this spreadsheet broken out, and, like I said, this is something I like to share with my clients, but, it literally, this is pretty cool. It tells you also, like, if you're, oh wait, here's really cool. That made up 24% of all donations of the cycle that I'm looking at, the 47 million. So candidate officers got about a quarter of that amount of money. The biggest chunk came from your GPACs, which is your general purpose PACs. They gave out $15 million right here, $15 million in the last cycle, like I'm saying, the 2022 to 2025. Then your impacts, your SPACs, they came in giving another $16 million. And this is just in the last couple of years from donors right here in Bexar County. I mean, they're your neighbors, kind of, you know what I mean? So this is things to consider out. I even know what the party, your party executive committees and who's given to that. We've got $1 million going into that in this last cycle as well. So we know who's given to who, and then of course James Barnes and Barnes Business. We have a little spreadsheet here that tells you all the details, and like I just want to let you know the top, of course, the top one that's receiving money here out of Bexar County. Let me see. The PAC is Texans for Greg Abbott. Got $5 million of those dollars. Charles Butts at Public Education Committees gave it out. Let me see, $4 million. But then we can look at the top of the line and get into a candidate. So those are PACs. For SPAC, and then probably Texas for Greg Abbott was a SPAC, whereas and if you don't know what these mean, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter what they mean. What matters is where the donors are given to it mean. So just stick with me here. But the top candidate money wise was Mark LaHood, who brought in over $1 million in the cycle. So he really kicking butt and taking names. And then here's an example of like Ernest Bales, who is not from Bexar County. He cycled out of here. And that was, of course, a GPAC pulling out over $800,000 of our donations. And so he came in and got some of our money. Here's a lot of folks, Van Dever, Schoolcraft. These aren't Beto. Beto got $300,000 from an SPAC out of us. So anyway, just throwing those little numbers out. So that's one side of the equation. And I can take it even a little further. I have all those broken out, and you can see like the top candidates, who's money wise, and your top candidates coming in at the top out of Bexar County donations in your CPACs, your candidate officer PACs. I'm sorry. And I'll put this up and show you like the top 10, but like out of Bexar County, Mark LaHood's number 1, Ernest Bales number 2, Steve Allison's number 3, Van Dever, Schoolcraft. You get down Burns and we see Phelan and Glenn Rogers, and these guys got money out from us. They all got money from Bexar County folks. You got Trey Martinez Fisher way down the line. Zaffarini. It's like these guys are getting people not from here getting more people from. Man, I tell you what, because somebody's doing a good job at selling. Y'all need to get out there and talk to these folks. So they're giving money to other folks outside of the county. So you know what I mean. There's a story to be had. But then the top GPACs, of course, you can see what those GPACs, and they're giving out the PACs. You got to keep in mind where the money sources are. A lot of people are like going to the party saying, "Where's your money?" But they are the least amount of money in this whole money pot. If you look at like between and what percentage is coming out of the party executive committees, and money wise, it's not much. And so when folks are looking for the party to do more, they probably are barking up the wrong tree in a lot of ways, because of the volume of donations. It's dollars in, dollars out. You know what I mean? Their total donations out of the whole cycle is 2%, versus the candidate office holders are grabbing 24%, and then the GPAC, SPAC, and impacts. And like I said, it's not about that, so I won't explain those. But that's 30, 50, 60, almost 70% of donations are coming from impacts, GPACs, and SPACs. And so are you? Where are you looking for your money? First, you got to know, what is a GPAC, impact, SPAC? I guess that's a different conversation, but that's why you hire me. I know what they are. You don't need to know. But if you want to know, they're out there to know. But there are different types of PACs doing different types of things, and you could find out who donates to those types of things, conservative causes, and maybe they're interested in a conservative candidate. You know what I mean? That you have to put yourself in position to speak to them. If you don't know who they are, how are you going to speak to them? You know what I mean? I'm just throwing that out there. So let me see. I've covered this enough. I've got broken down for every PAC type out there. There is just, what are we trying to accomplish here? But more important now, I want to move over to the other side, the donor side of the equation, because so that all means something. But so those are the top line numbers. But I mean, here, my computer closed down. Let me get it back into it here. And so I want to kind of give you an example of this, of how I kind of reverse engineer it. I know where the donors are. I know how to get a hold of them. There's out there in the world, and then I'm able to take that information and then turn around and go back to our different other databases, say our voter database, and that's where I like to do. And it doesn't come with my donor database. It's something I can do additional to my donor database for anybody that hires me. But there's the donor ID side of that voter database side of the equation. So for instance, I'm just gonna give you an example here. I'm taking a commissioner's court district, and I've narrowed it, and there's 4 of them in Bexar County. I've narrowed it down to 1 of them, and then I looked for like super donors, people that donate a lot. So they donate, and they're going to donate. So I've narrowed it down, and it's going to be a small number, but I've got 21 donors who have donated 10,000 plus, and so then I've got their aggregates, and so they might donate 10,000 a lot of times, or they might donate 100,000 one time, or it's a lot of stuff going on, but it equates to 10,000. They've at least given a check for $10,000. That is what I call a pretty big donor, because I haven't given a check for anything for $10,000. I don't know, never. Maybe I have, I guess, from the house. But either way, those guys are giving money to candidates like yourself, or PACs or committees like yourself, doing things. And so this is where you would reach out to them. And so I take and I have that connected, and now I know who they are. I know how much they give. And so this amount, I got 21 super donors. I call them super donors. I call them 10,000 plus donors. This is 10,000 plus, but super donors. They represent over $1,100,000 in this last 2 cycles. So 2022 to now, they gave out over $1 million plus $100,000. So $1,100,000. Can't get that out of my mouth. But so they're giving money. And they're giving money and they're super donors. And, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, these are super conservative donors. I say conservative, that's not the right word. They're super Republican. They vote and they're very active in the Republican Party. And so, I mean, in their voting habits. Now, I don't know what they do outside of that, but I do know they donate a lot too. And so who are they donating to? You know what I mean? And so I know who's donating to these folks. I know where they live. I know how they vote. I know all these things. We know everything. I always tell everybody we know everything, and people always are out there trying to work so hard. But it's like, we've got it. And we've got it because it's something I've done for the last 20 years. I mean, it's a piece of cake for me. I mean, I'm shocked sometimes how hard people work to get nowhere, because it takes a lot of money, a lot of effort to raise money. And so you need to go where the money's at. You need to know who's giving the money. And then you have to have strategy. So let's walk into that last part here. And one thing that I love at Barnes Business is, and I'll do this several different ways. I could literally say, okay, here is a template to go. You could sit down and figure this out yourself. Most people would prefer a session with me to sit down and do it. And I've done it with several, where I sit down in a sense that you're making the calls, we're setting the targets, we're getting it all done. And I've done this with several people's, but I could get a quote if you need one. But either way, it's on your shoulders. We have the template to who to call. It even goes so far. I printed it out, but it even goes so far as, did you send your thank you letter yet? Because you must send your thank you letter to. So it's literally a template of all the pieces to get you where you're trying to go. So sometimes it's hard to dedicate to making those calls, because we've been calling the wrong people trying to get money. But then there's also, once again, I'm not want to get into fundraising. In fact, I'll stick out of that. What I'm talking about is, we know where the donors are at. The donors, we know where they're at. And so, that being said, I think if you're looking to raise money, I would consider reaching out and hiring Barnes Business. Not that I'm going to raise it for you, because that is on your shoulders, but I could definitely tell you where they're at, and then you will have to do the good work to reach them and tell them that you are the right candidate to get their money. Anyway, I just, once again, I joke about a lot of this stuff because it's hard. But I also joke because it doesn't have to be hard if we slow down and we plan and we organize and we execute effectively. And that's any business, and that's what we want to see in our legislators anyway. We don't want to see a disorganized legislator. We want to see an organized legislator, one that can raise money, that can pull back and get it right. Because that's what we're looking for. People who have that ability to pull things together and make it happen. And so the first test is your campaign. And how are you going to do this? How are you going to put that shield on? So once again, it's super affordable. Don't even try it. Just call me. Let's set up an appointment with me and be serious, and then we can talk about this seriously, because we know where all the donors are. But here's the better part: we can go find more easy. So I could give you so many donors that you couldn't even swallow all of them and call them all or do whatever you got to do. I mean, actually, once again, I'm going to leave that to your fundraising side of the equation, because somebody's got to figure out a fundraising plan and execute on that. But either way, we know where the donors are at. And I'm going to leave you with this. This is a little longer today because I know donors are important. So if you've watched this whole thing and you feel like you can, maybe use a small consultation and maybe some decision making on how you're gonna approach your fundraising and where you're getting your donor list from and so forth. And these are not old fundraising lists. These are brand new, always kept decent. These are donors from the last just couple years. These aren't old donors. These are ones that are donating right now. So that being said, let's go do it. Barnes Business.